What is going on, everybody? My name is Radi and you're watching my channel, Radi the Brand. Today I'm going to show you how to create a full CRUD application using Node.js and MySQL. We will be using a few dependencies such as Express-Handlebars, the body parser, .env and MySQL. To run my database, I will be using XAMPP, but feel free to use whatever software you wish. For the layout of our website, I will be using Bootstrap, and we're just going to load it from a CDN. And I know that most of you are familiar with Bootstrap and it's very easy to get going. Now, before we start, let me show you a quick demo of what we'll be doing. Okay, if this is something that you want to build, please stick around. This tutorial did take a very long time to create, so I would appreciate it if you smash the likes, consider subscribing to my channel, and if you have any questions, comment below. Now let's jump on the computer and get started. Welcome everybody, and let's get started by creating our project. Before we begin, make sure that you have a MySQL database available, whether it be locally or remotely. And for this video, I will be using XAMPP. XAMPP is free for Mac, Linux and Windows. If you wish to follow along, you can pause the video, go ahead, install XAMPP, configure it, and make sure that MySQL and Apache are running. We'll come back to this later, but if you are using alternative software, don't worry, that would be absolutely fine as long as you're using MySQL. Let's minimize this and start by initializing the new project. As you can see, I have created a new project folder called User Management Tutorial, and on Windows, to go straight to this folder in PowerShell, I can do left shift, right click and open PowerShell window here. This will basically just CD to the project folder, and if you're Mac or Linux, you might have to just CD manually, which is not a big deal. Once you do that, CD to your project folder, let's do npm init and create a new project. The only thing I'm going to fill here is the package name. So I'm just going to call mine something like Node.js and then user management. Something like this will do. And then just keep pressing enter until we're done with the setup. As you can see, this created package.json file for us in our folder. And now we can start installing the dependencies that we need for this project. We can actually install all of the dependencies at once doing npm install, and we can start listing them. The first dependency that we need to install is Express, and this is for our Express server that we're going to create. So let's do Express. Then we need .env, and .env is basically going to keep our database credentials. We have Express-Handlebars. We have the body parser, and the body parser is basically a middleware that is going to help us pass data. For example, from some of the forms when we submit them, we can grab some of the data and maybe insert it into the MySQL, which leads me to the last dependency that we need to add, which is MySQL. Okay, press enter, and this should take a couple of seconds to install. The next thing that we need to do is install Nodemon. Nodemon is a development dependency, and that's why I'm installing it separately. So let's do npm install --save-dev Nodemon. And Nodemon will basically restart the server for us automatically every time we make a change in your project. Otherwise, we'll have to do that manually, and that could consume a lot of time. Now that we have pretty much all of the dependencies that we need for a project, we can finally open our project in our favorite editor. For me, this is Visual Studio Code, but just open it in the one that you usually use. So I can do code dot, and this will open the project for me. And if you're using another editor, obviously just go to File and open your new project. Once you're in the editor, just open package.json so we can have a look at it super quickly. And as you can see, we have the name, version, description, and so on. The important bit here is the dependencies that we just installed and the development dependency, which is Nodemon. Now, if we want our project to run with Nodemon, we actually need to add another line in the script. So let's do comma, and then inside here we need to do start, and we need to tell our application to start with Nodemon. To do this, we simply do Nodemon, and we need to specify the name of the file that Nodemon needs to start, and we don't have it yet, but we're going to create it right now. So let's call this one app.js, like so, and save. Now let's create this app.js file quickly inside here, inside the Explorer on the left side, and we can just do app.js like so. All right, we are done here. Let's start by setting up an Express server. Setting up an Express server is actually fairly easy. The first thing that we need to do is require Express. We need to initialize Express, set up a port number, and then listen on that port number. Let's do that. So let's do const express equals require, and then we require Express like so, and close. We now need to initialize Express, and to do this we can do const app equals Express like so, and close. And then we need to specify a port number for our Express server to listen on. So we can create this, we can create another const port equals, and here if you wish to publish your app somewhere, we could attempt to use the environment port number just by doing process dot environment env dot port, or we can use a default port number of 5000, for example. If this port is in use, you can try something else, and that should work. Okay, the final thing that we need to do is tell Express to actually listen to on this port. To do this, we can simply do app.listen, and then we can pass the port number, comma, and then we need a arrow function here, so we can do this. And let's console log something like listening on port number of 5000. So we can do console log, and then with the template literal, we can do single slanted quote and do listening on port, and then $, curly brackets, and we pass the port in here, and we should be good to go. If we now go back to the PowerShell, I've actually cleared this just now, but if we go back to the PowerShell and we do npm start, you will see that, hopefully you will see that Nodemon is starting the node app.js and it's listening on port 5000, which means that our Express server is now working, and we can continue by adding our other development dependencies. Okay, I was thinking that it might be best to just list all of the dependencies first, and then we'll work our way down. So the first dependency that we need is the Express-Handlebars. Let's do const expphbs, and this is basically short for Express-Handlebars, and this will be equals require, and then we are requiring Express-Handlebars like so. And this is basically our rendering engine. Let's now add the body parser, so const body parser like so, require, and then we require the body parser like so, and we also need to require MySQL. So let's do const MySQL equals require, and then MySQL. The last thing that we need to require is the .env, but this one we can do slightly different. We can do it by doing require, and then inside here we just say .env and then config like so. Now that we have all of the dependencies, we will go through each one and set everything up. I'm thinking let's start with the body parser. So let's include the body parser in here, and the body parser is basically a parsing middleware. As I mentioned earlier, this will help us to pass JSON data through our forms. So let me show you how to do this. And I'm going to keep everything clean with a few comments so everybody knows what it is, and you can reference it later in the article that I will be creating. So let's do parsing middleware. And this one will be parse x www form and URL encoded. All right, to do this, we can do app.use body parser, and we can do the URL encoded in here. And we need to set this to be extended as false. All right. If you want to understand more about this, you can always go to the documentation under npm, npm.js.com, search for body parser, go to body parser, and inside here, you will see somewhere in here, here we go, body parser, URL encoded, returns middleware that only parses URL encoded bodies and only looks at requests where the content type header matches the type option, and so on. So feel free to explore every single dependency. The documentation, it's pretty good usually. So yeah, let's continue. Let's go back. One thing that I didn't show you is that our server is running, but if we go to the website and if we refresh, you should get this message cannot get. And this is because we actually haven't set up any routes and we're not rendering anything just yet, but we'll do this in a second. Let's go back to the application. We've done the URL encoded, but we also need to make sure that the body parser is using JSON. So parse application /JSON, and we can do app.use and then body parser.json. Close this, and we should be good to go. We're done with the body parser. We can now use it, and I will show you how to do that later on once we created some of the forms. Another thing that I want to do early is set up my static files. Now, static files are the files that you might want to add on your front end, such as you might want to add a custom CSS file, you might want to add some custom JavaScript files, or you might want to have an easy access to your images. And to do this, we need to basically set up, this comes from Express, by the way, we need to set up our static files just by using app.use express, and then we say static, and then inside here we say the name of the static folder. In my case, I'm going to call mine public to stay consistent with all of my tutorials. So let's go public and close. We will need to create this folder as well, so we might as well just do it now as we're here. So let's create a new folder in the Explorer here and call it public. Inside here, I'm going to create another folder called CSS, and inside this folder, I'm going to create a file called something like, let's say, main.scss. I just like using SCSS, but of course, if you don't like using SCSS, just use main.css and write your styles in there. Obviously, when I compile my SCSS, this will create the compiled main.css for me. So let's close this. And we can include this later on in our HTML. And the same thing in here, you can add an images folder or JavaScript folder and so on. I'm only going to be using CSS today, so let's keep it simple and straight to the point. Save this, go back to app.js, and let's have a look at what else do we need. Let me comment this actually. So this will be static files. And the next thing that we need to do is set up our templating engine. If you watched my previous tutorials, I usually use EJS, but I've mentioned a few times that I really don't like the syntax of EJS. It's a little bit hard to write, and this time I wanted to show you handlebars. I believe that handlebars is so much easier to write and it looks so much nicer, and you will see as we start writing it later on. But anyways, let's start by setting up our templating engine. So and handlebars, it's very similar to EJS. It uses views and layouts folder as a default. I will show you in a second. But one thing about handlebars is that the default file extension is actually .handlebars, which is fairly long. So in order for us to change this, we can actually do app.engine, and we can do HBS, expHBS, which we have here at the top. And this needs to be outside, like so. And then inside here, we pass the options, and the option is extension name EX. Here it is, extension name, just like this. And then the extension name that I want is .HBS to stay consistent with everything online, with their documentation as well. So let's close this. And we now need to set up our view engine, which is handlebars. So app.set, and inside here we do exactly the same as EJS. We do view engine, and we set the view engine to be HBS. This is it. Now, as I said, this uses, by default, uses views folder and layout. Now, layouts can be very useful, which I will show you in a second. If you watch my EJS tutorial, you probably already know how they work. Much easier to maintain your layout, basically. That's pretty much it. So let's create a folder called views, and I will explain as I go. And in this folder, we're going to have to create another one called layouts. And of course, this is the default, but you can change it if you wish. I do like the default option here, so I'm going to keep it as it is. And inside here, the default layout file is called main. So let's do main and HBS, which is the handlebar extension that we've set in app.js. So this will be our main. We also need to create maybe a home page. So let's create one inside views, and you can either call it index if you wish, or we can call it just home. I'm going to call my home.hbs. It doesn't really matter that much. As long as you know which one is home, it's fine. And this needs to be inside views. Okay, this is all looking good. We have our layout setup. We have a home page, and I will show you how the layouts work in a second. But the last thing that we need to do in here is actually we need to render this page. To do this, let's say, I don't know, router or navigation, maybe. I don't know, it's probably route is probably the right way. Okay, let's say app.get, and we need to get the front page. So basically, if we don't specify anything, this is the home page. If we specify something like, let's say, about, this will go to /about, and this will render, and this will be the route for the about page. So that's why I'm not specifying absolutely anything here. And then we can get the request, and then response. This will be an arrow function, and inside here we can use the response.render, and we can render the home page. So home, and we don't need to specify the HBS extension here. It's smart enough to know what to render, the engine, and we can actually close this. Yeah, I think we're done, and let's close this as well. And we're done. Hopefully, if we go back to the npm here, sorry, the PowerShell, we shouldn't get any errors, which is good. And if we go back to a browser and under localhost port of 5000, if we refresh, you will see that we no longer get that cannot get. This means that our pages are actually rendering. So if I do control new, obviously we don't have any HTML, but let's do that. So first of all, let's set up the layout. So this is going to be our main layout of our website, which we're going to use throughout all of the pages. Of course, you can create different layouts, but I'm not going to do today. I'm not going to do this today because I want to keep the tutorial as short as possible and as simple as possible. So let's set up our main layout. First of all, let's write some HTML, and I'm going to type HTML, select HTML5, and this will create a blank HTML document. So let's change the title, user management system. Save this. And in order for pages to use this layout, we actually have to do some handlebars here, and with 3 curly brackets like so, 1, 2, 3 to open and 1, 2, 3 to close, we need to do body. What that means is that everything we put into the homepage will be rendered in here. But obviously we don't have anything in the homepage at the moment. Let me save this and show you how this looks. So if we refresh, we don't have anything. Obviously the title changed, but if we do Control and U, you will see that we're getting the HTML here, which is good. And now if we go back and if we add some content to home.hbs, so let's say we do an h1 of hello, save this, let's go back, excuse me, let's go back to this, refresh, as you can see, we get hello. And if we refresh the code, you will see that the home page is now rendered in here, which means that our layout will be consistent throughout all of the pages, and we can just continue working on this. Now that we're here, I think it's a good time to start doing the layout of our page. And for this tutorial, I'm going to use Bootstrap because it's the most familiar framework out there and most people know how to use it. And we can make a fairly decent looking website quick. So if we go to getbootstrap.com, I will be using the current version, which is version 5.0.0-beta 1. And if we click on get started, we can go to CSS here, grab the CSS, go back to main.hbs, and just after the title, we can paste the CSS. Let's go to view and toggle world wrap so we can see a little bit better. I think I've zoomed in quite a lot, and that's why. And also I want to add the JavaScript of Bootstrap, which we can find here. I'm just going to grab the bundle. So let's grab this, and this we need to paste just above our ending body tag here. So let's paste it like so. We should be good to go. And the last thing that I wanted to do is add the Bootstrap icons, which are separate. So we can go back to grab the icons. I think icons. Okay, yeah. Go under icons, and the URL is icons.getbootstrap.com, and then under install, we should be able to grab the CDN. So let's grab that, and we can paste it in here. Save. Now we should have everything that we need from Bootstrap, and we can start building all out. As you can see, the icons are pretty cool. You can just find the icons that you like, select on one, and this will give you the code. I already know which ones I'm going to use, so I'm going to save you the time and close this. We can also close this one as well, but I will need the documentation. So under docs, we're going to be using this. So first of all, I want to create a nice navigation bar, kind of like this. It's actually pretty nice, but yeah, let's do nav. Click on nav bar, and the one we can use is this one. I'm not going to spend too much time on like making the website nice because we're mainly learning Node.js here, not design, but of course design is important. So let's grab this and paste this just above our body because we want the header to be consistent on all pages. So let's paste this, and actually I can make this smaller. You can see there is a lot of this because I've zoomed in quite a lot. But if we right click and format document, this will make it slightly better maybe. And I don't need all of the links, so I'm just going to remove some of the lists. Yep, remove. Okay, let's remove all this. I'm just going to keep home for now. And because this is the home page, we can just do slash. And I'm going to change the logo in here. Well, I don't have a logo, but I'm just going to say user management system. Save this, and yeah, and change the link. Save this, and we should be good to go. If we check this out in the browser, you will see that, well, I've zoomed in so much. You see that we're getting the nice navigation bar. I mean, this could be improved, definitely. So let's quickly change it a little bit. Instead of having the nav bar as light, I'm going to go with dark, and then dark, And then the search button, instead of success, I'm going to do light. Hopefully this will look much better. Okay, I'm happy with this. This will be okay. Now, the next thing I want to do is grab a container. The container is basically going to center a line or page. If you want to learn more about container, just go to the docs. Containers, and they give you loads of options in here. But the one I'm going to be using is just the default one here, and copy this. And for the container, I'm actually going to wrap the body itself because I want all of the pages to be consistent. So let's paste this in here and cut the body and paste it in here. Save, go back, refresh. And as you can see now, our home page is rendered inside here, inside the container, which will be center aligned. But the only thing that I don't like is the spacing. So let's just give it a little bit of padding for now. So maybe padding top 5, padding bottom 5. I'm sure that would look nice. Yeah, that's looking good. Before we start building our database, let's actually build a little bit more on our front page. And on the home page, I want to display all of the users. And if you're displaying a lot of data, we might as well just use the table from Bootstrap. So let's do table. Grab the first table that we see, this one here. Maybe we can modify it to make it slightly better looking. So let's grab this. We can now close this because we're done with it. And let's open the home HVS page, which is our home page, and let's start building our table. So let's paste this. This is our table, and we're gonna need to display a few things. So for example, this is fine. Then we can display the first name, then we can display the last name, then we can display the email of the user. And let's create another row in here. So Alt Shift and down arrow will copy this line. So we can do phone. And the last thing that I want to do is action. Action will be things such as viewing the record, deleting the record, and edit it. So let's do action. And we need to, to keep it simple, let's remove those rows. They're gonna be rendered from the database. We're gonna render the information from the database. So this is going to loop basically and create more rows for us. But for now, just to make it look nice, let's populate it with some fake data. So we have number 1, Mark, Otto, and then we have email.mdo.com, and then we have a phone number. So for the phone number, we can just use like this. Doesn't really matter. And for the action, we're gonna have 3 buttons. So we might as well create them now. For the buttons, I'm just going to use 3 links and we'll link them as we go along. So let's create a link, a button link. So href equals, and I'm going to keep this empty for now. But of course, we'll come back to it very soon. So this will be href, and inside here, we can say type button, and then class name will be btn dash-light. Then let's make it small. So btn small. And last but not least, we need to put something in this button. So this will be our view button. And I also want to add an icon. And to add an icon, as I showed you earlier, we can do I. And then class name will be Bootstrap icons. And then Bootstrap icons dash I for view. I think that would be a good one. And let's just make a little bit of space. This is our first button. So let's duplicate this 2 more times by holding Alt Shift and down arrow twice. And this would be our edit button. And this would be our delete button. Okay, I think this is good enough. What else can we change? Yes, the icons need changing. So this icon can be pencil. And the delete icon can be bootstrap icon and then person dash X, which is like a delete record icon. If we save this, go back to the page, let's have a look at what we got. All right, this is not too bad at all. I could do a little bit of, I mean, it would be nice if the text was centered and it would be nice if this was to the right. So let's modify ever so slightly so it doesn't look as bad as it is. So to modify the table, we can do it with borders. So we can do table dash bordered. Then we can make it dark at the top and class dark. I actually want to right align this action and the buttons. So let's do a class of text end, and let's copy this class so we can use it on the buttons here like so, and let's tidy this up. Save this, go back, refresh. Much better, I think. I don't know if the dark bit worked. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. Obviously, we can spend a little bit more time to make it nice. I think that now that we have this setup, I think it's a good time to start working on the database and see how we can do our first query. Let's start creating our database. As I mentioned earlier in this tutorial, I will be using XAMPP, and I've already started my Apache and MySQL, which means that I can go to localhost/phpMyAdmin and visit the phpMyAdmin page. So localhost/phpMyAdmin, and as you can see, I'm at the phpMyAdmin admin page, and my username is set to root, which we'll need later on, and my password is set to password. So let's press OK and login. Here on the left side are our databases. These are some other projects that I've worked on, but today we're going to create a new database, and to do this, we can go here on the left side at the top, create new, and we need to give it a name. So I'm thinking of just calling this one user management underscore tutorial and underscore tut as tutorial, and let's create the database. As you can see on the left side here, we now have the database, but we don't have any tables. Now, this is a good time to create our schema. So let's create a new table, and this will be called users. This will be called user. Obviously, you can name it whatever you like, and we need to give it a few columns. The amount of columns that I want are going to be 7. So let me change this, and let's press go. And by the way, you can do this with SQL. If you're familiar with SQL, it might be faster for you. And also, as I am creating this, I will post the SQL file for you on my article if you wish to save a little bit of time, but it's fairly easy to create in both ways. So I will show you. So first of all, our table is called user, and the first record that I want is going to be called ID. This is going to be a unique number for every single user that we have, and that's why I'm going to leave it as an integer. This needs to be auto incremented and also set as a primary key. Now, the next one I'm going to have is first name. This is basically going to be the user's first name. We can set this to varchar, and I'm going to keep it simple for now, maybe like 45 characters, but of course, depending on your application, you have to make the choice of how much length you want for that and so on. So let's keep it simple for now. Last name, varchar 45. Email, varchar 45. Phone, varchar 45. Then comments can be text, because that could be like a big text, and the text takes a maximum length of 65,535, as you can see here. So let's select this. Obviously, we probably won't have that many comments, but it doesn't matter too much at the moment. And the last thing that I want to do is status. Now, status you can do in so many ways depending on your application. You could keep it as integer, and you could have, for example, 0 to be an active user, 1 to be, deleted, 2 to be banned, and so on. But to make it very understandable, I don't know if this is correct, to say I'm going to use varchar, and we just keep it with words. So I want to make sure that the status of the user originally when we inserted a record is actually set to active. To do this, we can change the default value here to as defined, and I can just put active like so. And I think that should be good enough. As I said, depending on application, you can choose. Now, all of this could have been done with an SQL. So if we preview the SQL, this will give you the code of creating the table. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to copy this for you, and I'm going to save it in the folder here, just so later on I can publish it on my article. And if you wish to save a little bit of time, you can just insert it. I will show you how in a second. So let's say, what is this? User schema. Is this how you type schema.sql? And let's paste it in here like so. Obviously, this doesn't need to be in our project, but I'm just going to keep it here for now. And what you could have done is you could copy this, and instead of pressing save here, I will press save in order to save all this. You could go under SQL and insert the command manually. So let me save this first of all. Please enter valid length for comment, or valid length for this. Oh, okay. Let's say 10. And I'm going to have to get this again, close and save. All right, let me update this super quickly here. Save it and remove it. All right, as you can see, we now have our user table. Everything is in here. And as I said, if you wanted to insert the code, you can go to SQL, paste it in here, and just go. And this will create exactly the same structure as I have inside here. We have the key, which is good. This is our primary key, and we're good to go. One thing that we could do is create a record just for now, but later on I have prepared a little SQL file that you can insert as well and use instead of creating records manually, but also we'll create a form as well, so that would be easy. So one thing, let's do one thing and create a record. As the first one, ID we don't have to specify. This will be unique and it will be automatically generated. So first name, I'm going to have Ruddy. Last name, I'm going to have the brand. Email, I'm going to have hello@Ruddy. Phone, let's just use this one here. Comments, hey, this is a comment. And status is active, and we can press go. Okay, if we go back to browse, you can see that we have one record, which means that we can start using our database and we can pull this record. Let's go back to our page and let's go back to the home HBS. Now, obviously this needs to be populated from the database, which we'll do in a second. But first of all, let's go to app and see how we can connect to it. So if we click on app, and if you remember at the top, we included MySQL. So let me show you how we can actually use it. Maybe here under the templating engine, let's make some space so you can see a little bit better. And first of all, we need to create a connection pool. A connection pool is a cache of database connections maintained so that the connection can be reused when future requests to the database are required. I'm going to create a new connection pool. So to do this, let's comment connection pool, and to do this we can do const pool equals MySQL, and this will be .create pool. This is how we create a pool, and inside here is where we can specify the connection limit, the host that we want to use, the user, the password, and the database. Now, if you remember earlier, we required this .env file. The reason I'm using .env file is because we can have like a central place for our credentials, for database credentials. So let's create this file and enter our database details before we create the pool. So to do this, let's create a new file, .env, and inside the .env file we're gonna have db underscore host, and the host name for me is called localhost because I'm using XAMPP here locally. The database name will be equals, I actually forgot what it was called, so let's go back to the database and copy this. This is our database name here. Then let's go and create the database user, and for me this was root as default and database password. So let's say just database pass, and this will be password for me. Alright, I'm done with the .env file, and now I can get those variables and pass them inside here so we can reuse them, and we can reuse this on many pages, and we have one central place where our details are saved. Let's start by doing the connection limit. First of all, we can specify this by doing connection limit, and you can read a little bit more about this in their documentation. It's all really well explained. And this would be, let's say, I don't know, something like 100 for now. And then let's specify the host. Let's tidy it up so it looks a little bit neater. And to grab the environment variables, we can actually do process.env, .db host is the host. Then we can do comma. Oh, excuse me. Comma. I hate this pop-up here because you can't see very well. So then we have user, and for the user we can do exactly the same as here. So we can do process.env.database user. Maybe we can do comma, copy this line and change this one to password. And this will be db underscore pass, and this was a bad idea, so now I need to tidy it up. And the last one that we need to set is the database name. So database like so, and oh, okay, I misspelled it. So database, and let's do process env, and then I think it's called db name. We don't need comma here as is the last value. Let's save this, and now we need to connect to our database. To do this, let's do to connect to DB, something like this. And let's do pull.getConnection. And inside here, we can get two values. We can get an error, or we can get the connection. And this will be an arrow function like so. So if we close this as well, if we get an error, we can check by doing if error. We can throw the error like so. Throw error. Okay, and this would mean that something is wrong and we did not connect. So not connected. And then if we connect, we can console log something like connected, and we can get the connection thread ID if you wish to. So to do this, we can do console log, and let's just console log something like connected as ID and then space, and then we can add the ID here by using connection dot thread ID and close. Technically speaking, if we have entered the database credentials correctly, our database is running, if we save and refresh our browser, actually if we only save and if we go to PowerShell or terminal, you should see this, again we are listening on port 5000, and you should see this connected as ID 247, and this is because I've probably used it quite a lot. And this is all good. We didn't get an error, which is good. But if I do make a mistake, let's say in my .env file, I mistakenly put the wrong database name, maybe to 1 or 12, save this and go back, refresh, actually here. This didn't refresh. Oh, maybe it's not refreshing. Why are you not refreshing? Maybe I need to save something else. Okay, let's save here. I don't know why isn't it refreshing, but let's restart it. Okay, as you can see, now we're getting a error, and this is saying MySQL message unknown database user management to 12. And so if you get this, maybe your credentials are wrong. So let me go back and fix this by changing it to back. Save this, and let me just, do I have to restart? Come on, Nodman, do your job. Okay, it's all good, we're connected. Technically speaking, we could do everything inside here. We can create multiple routes and do everything inside here. But as the code grows, this could get really messy, and it's best to be organized. And this is why we're gonna create another folder now called server, and inside this server we're gonna separate the route from the logic. So we will have route and controllers. Let's start by creating the folder first of all, and we'll come back to this in a second. Let's create a new folder, not in views, it needs to be outside views. So let's create a new folder called server, and inside the server we're gonna have controllers. And controllers, as I said earlier, this will be basically where our logic goes. And let's create another folder called routes. And the routes are basically kind of like the pages that we'll be creating. Inside the route, let's create a new file called users. Inside routes, let's create a new file called user. And this will be a JS file. And this is because we only, today we're only working with a single table name called user. So I'm just going to be having a few user routes. But of course, as your code gets more complicated, you could add more. Or you could just have one route with multiple controllers, which I can also show you how to do as well. So inside controllers, let's create a user controller. So let's do user capital C on controller.js and save. This should be good. Okay, let's now make our app work with the routes and a simple controller. To do this, obviously, we need to move this now. And let's actually cut this. I might end up using it in a second. And we need to, first of all, tell our app where our routes are. So our routes are obviously inside server and then route. To do this, we can create a const that will hold the folder path. So we can do const routes, and this will be require. And inside here, we can just specify .server/routes/user. This is gonna be the path. And now we can tell Express to use this route. So app.use, and we can just put slash here to use the first router, the home page, and then we can just pass the path in here, which is on the route, like so, and that should do the job. And now, technically speaking, if I go to users.js, and let me close everything else so we don't get confused. Technically speaking, if I do this, you might think that this will work, but almost. We actually need to require Express here, and we need to get the Express route as well. So to do this, let's first of all do const Express equals require, and then Express. And now we need to create the router. So const router equals express.router, like so. And now we can use this router instead of app. So let's replace app to router and save. This should work exactly the same way as it did before. So technically speaking, if we go back and we refresh, we're getting an error. And this is most likely because we need to explore this router. And this is because we actually need to explore this router. So we can do module.export, and that would be equals router, like so. And if we save this now and go back, you will see that this is working, or it should be working. And yeah, everything is working as it used to before. So we're all good in here. But also we want to separate our router logic into the controllers. Now to do this, let's include our first controller, well, and only one, which will be user controller. So let's do const, and maybe we can give it a name of user controller equals, and then we need to require the path to this user controller. So that would be dot once going back. Is that one going back? I think so. Okay, 2 dot controllers, and then we need to use and then we need to select user controller. We don't need to specify JS, and we can just close this. And now in order to use this user controller, we can actually do router dot get, and because we want to hit the home page, we can just do slash, then comma, and then we can specify the router that we want to use, so user controller, and then we need to specify which function that we want to use. For example, we might have a couple of functions. For example, we could have a create one, we can have find, we can have update, we can have delete, and so on. So we need to create that as well. And for the first one, let's just call this one a view, because when I hit the home page, I just want to go to the database and query all the usernames. So let's just call it view for now. And we can actually grab this now, save, and this is going to be our first route here using our user controller. And now inside user controllers, we're going to actually have to create this view. To do this, we can simply do exports. So let's do view users, and let's do exports view equals, and then this will be exactly the same as we did earlier. So request and response. So let's do rec and res, and this will be, I think I'm doing it wrong. Am I doing it wrong? No, this is correct. Yeah, that's correct. And this will be like so, I believe. Okay, yeah, this is looking good. And now if we wanted to render the page, we can simply just do exactly the same thing as we done before, res.render, and we render the page that we want. So all of our logic is going to be here now. And to test whether this is working, obviously let's tidy it up a little bit. Save, go back, refresh, and as you can see, everything is working. Now all routes are separate to our controllers, which will make our code much cleaner. And as I mentioned earlier, I will show you how to create multiple controllers, and to create another controller is exactly the same way. You just create a different file. So maybe you can create a client controller, then you require your current controller here. So it will be like client controller, you change this to client controller, and then you can obviously copy this in here and have different functions for client controller, or you can even do this for every single user controller as well. You can do different ones, but OAuth is not that big, so I think one controller will be good enough, and we'll just separate it with different functions. All right, we were close to doing the database stuff, and now that we have our first router and it's all working, we know that our logic needs to go under the user controller. Now here's the thing, we actually need to include the MySQL here as well. So let's do that. Const MySQL equals require, and then we require MySQL. And if you remember in app.js, where we created this pool and we created the connection, we can actually copy this now and reuse it. So this is the great thing about doing the process.env, is that we have the database credentials in one place, so that's very easy to maintain. Anyways, all this logic is going to have to go inside our view, user view. So obviously we're gonna have to remove this in a second, but let's start from the top. Actually, we need to put this outside so we can make a connection in all of our views, all of our exports here. So let's do that. Sorry. Okay, we get the connection pool here. It's all good. And then inside here is where we can do the queries. So let's remove this comment just to make it a little bit cleaner. And of course, we don't want to render there. I'm going to cut this. And we're getting a connection to the database. If something happens, we get an error. If we connect, we get connected as ID and it displays the thread ID. And now this is where we can start doing some queries. Let's use the connection. To use the connection and create a simple query, we can do connection dot query, and inside here is where we do the MySQL queries. If you're familiar with MySQL, this should be very familiar to you. It's exactly the same as you would do in, well, it's MySQL, isn't it? It's exactly the same way as you would do it in PHP. So we can do something like, let's do a simple one for now. We can do select everything, star means everything from user, and actually that's it. That's the most simple query we can do. We're selecting everything from the table user. Now we can get here an error or we can get the data back, and I'm going to use rows to get the data back, and this will be a arrow function like so, and okay, close. And inside here is where we can do some of our logic. This is also spread out, but okay, this is where we can do some of our logic. For example, let's say first of all, when the connection is done, we need to release it. So let's do a simple comment here. When done with. To do this, we can do connection.release. Like so, close it. And now let's just add a very simple if statement. So if we get some data, we can then render the page. But if we don't, maybe we just display a console. Maybe we just console log the error. To do this, we can check if not error with exclamation point. If we don't have an error, then we can do res.render, and we can render the home page, which is inside views home, as we had before. But else, if we have an error, maybe we just console log it. Log. I guess you could render like a page saying, I don't know, like there has been a MySQL error, you know, that's totally up to you. So let's just do error if we want to save this. And also one thing that I forgot, which is probably the most important thing, is that we need to pass the data that we're getting from the database using rows. So to do this, we can, inside here, inside the render, we can pass objects by doing comma, and with the curly brackets, we can just pass the object of rows. And also, if you wish, we can display this inside the console by doing console log, and then we can do a simple message here like the data from user, the table, then we can do /n rows. Okay, this should display the data in the console as well. Okay, this is all good. If we don't have any errors, let's save, go back to the page, refresh, no errors so far. If you go back to the PowerShell, you will see that we're actually getting the first record from the database, which is awesome. And now let me show you how we can display this using handlebars. If we go back to our HTML, home, handlebars, we want to basically do a loop inside here and replace the data. So table row. Okay, with EJS, it's actually fairly simple to do this. We can do 2 squiggly brackets like so, and then hashtag each, and then we can grab the object, which is called rows from here. So let's grab rows. And then we need to obviously end this somewhere. So we can do open curly brackets, close curly brackets, and to end it, we can just do slash each, like so. If we want to replace the data, we can now do open with squiggly brackets, close with squiggly brackets, and we can now use the this dot and then the table ID that we want to select. So for example, I can do ID, which is, if you remember, if you go back to the database, it's this here, ID, and then we have first name, last name, email, phone, comment, and status. So let's do that. I can simply copy this and replace everything. And that's it. So let's do this first name, first underscore name, last underscore name. What was this? Email. And then we have phone number. Okay, save this. Hopefully, if we refresh the page now, something has happened. Do we get an error? Okay, I don't know what happened. If we refresh the page now, you will see that we're getting the data from the database. So if I was to update this record somehow, and I don't know, let's say I removed, I don't know, Ruddy123 and save this record, and if I refreshed, you'll see that this is actually coming from the database and it's actually console logged in here as well, just for testing purposes. So that is pretty awesome. So far we've managed to get some data, but of course it would be nice to have a little bit more data. Is this zoomed in? Yeah, this is zoomed in so much, but of course it would be nice to have a little bit more data, and I've actually prepared another SQL file that you can insert into your SQL here. So I'm going to post this if you wish to use it on the blog post as well, but let me find it first of all and I will paste it in here. All right, so I found the record. I basically added some random users, random names and phone numbers. It doesn't really matter, it's just for testing purposes. Let me close this and let's go back to the page. And I can insert some of the users in here as long as the data matches. Of course, I've got ID, first name, last name, email, phone, comment, and status. So if I press go and we go back to the users, as you can see, we have quite a few users and this is looking good. So if I go back to my page and refresh, you will see that we are getting all the users listed, which is pretty cool. My PC is being a little bit slow, so I'm going to reset this. Let me restart it. All right, this is all looking good. Of course, by doing different MySQL queries, you can order your database, order your records the way you want, but I'm going to keep it simple. And one more thing that I wanted to show you here is that let's make this query slightly more complicated. So for example, if we removed this user, basically I've been bad and we need to ban this user. Maybe we can just do, I don't know, let's do removes and press go. Obviously at the moment our query just displays everything. We can make our query very specific just to display first name, last name, email and phone number. But at the moment I'm just using all. This is not really a MySQL tutorial, so I'm not gonna go in much detail, but what I wanted to show you is that what you could do, for example, is select all the users with status of active. So let's say we have select everything from users, and then we can do where status is equals maybe active. I don't know, you can make it more complicated. You can make it better for yourself. All right. If we save this, technically speaking, I shouldn't be popping up anymore. So I'm here now, but if you refresh, I don't know why my PC is being so slow. The data from table undefined. Oh, and I have a spelling mistake, so status. So if you go back, okay, if we go back and refresh, you will see that I'm no longer appearing, but my record is still in the database here. And this is how you could potentially keep the user data in your database just in case something happens, like maybe you delete one by mistake. and so on. You can also just delete them if you wish. And also you can have, if you want to make your database even nicer, you could have date created and date modified inserted into here, which would be much better, I believe. But yeah, just a few ideas. Now that we have this, we might as well just wire up the search, because this would be very similar to what we just done. So let's do that. I'm going to tidy this up a little bit, like so. For the search, let's create another export just like this. So let's copy this and let's paste it in here, and let's do, I don't know, find. I think find is okay, and close. Of course, we need to wire this up, and let's comment as well. Find user by search, something like this. And we need to wire this up inside the routers, so user, and we can simply just copy this here. So router, this time we need to post, because we'll be posting from the search box. So let's change this to post. Again, we're posting on the home page, but we need to change this to find, so it uses the new block of code that we just created. Save this and we should be good to go here. If we go back to user controller, this is where we're going to be adding the query. But before we do this, we actually need to modify the form. Now the form was under views layout, main, and inside the header here. So we need to make sure that our form here is set to method post and the action is set to the front page. So to do this, we can do method equals post like this, and then we can do action, not accept, action equals slash, and this will be our home page. And for now, let's not validate anything, but of course you can validate this if you wish. So no validate would ignore any validation just in case. But yeah, of course, if you're inserting anything into a database, you should validate your data. And I've actually done a full-on tutorial on this, which you can watch. I will link in the description below, and the article, how to validate your data on the back end. And of course, it's nice to validate it on the front end as well. Bootstrap makes that super easy to do. Just have a look at the forms. We've wired our form, but one more thing, we need to find what the input name is. So at the moment we don't have a name. Let's add a name here. Let's call him John. No, I'm joking. It's going to be called search. Okay, this is what we're going to have to grab. So let's save this. Let's remove it, remove this page as well, and let's focus on the find. Now, technically speaking, we should be able to reuse most of the stuff from here, and we might as well. So let's copy this and paste everything in here, and let's just modify slightly. Now, let's do it like this so you can see a little bit better what's happening. Of course, we're going to have to change the query. To grab the value from the search box, which we named search, very good name, we need to grab the value, and to grab the value we can use the rec.body. Let's do let, and maybe we can call it search term, and this will be equals rec.request.body and search. Search is the name of the actual input that we just changed. And technically speaking, I can just console log this right now, and if I input something, that should give me the text that I've entered. We know that this is going to work, so we might as well just do the query now. And to do the query, you can go a little bit more complicated than I would in here, but I'm just going to show you a super quick example here. So let me start from beginning. So we need to select everything from user, and we need to say where. For example, let's use first name, for example. First underscore name is like question mark. And the reason I'm doing question mark is because I'm trying to prevent MySQL injection, and you can read MySQL injection in more detail online and on the MySQL npm package. They explain everything about it. but that's why I'm using the question mark. And now I have to pass the value outside this. So to do this, I can actually use something like percentage, so we don't get any bad data, plus search term, which we have here. So this is going to pass the value inside here, and we can do plus and another percentage. Where's percentage? Okay, and so far, if we search something, it's only going to search it by first name because this is what we've done. Let's test it out first of all, before we make it any more complicated. I'll refresh, everything is working, and let's say we want to find Henry. So if I put HE and search, data from user table, query empty. Okay, let's have a look what I've done. All right, I don't know what I've done here, but let's have a look. Request, that's fine. Search term body. Connection query, select everything from user where question mark. Oh, okay. I think I've missed the comma here. That's why. All right. I usually make silly spelling mistakes, but I think I've missed the comma here and that's why it's not working. So let's go back, refresh. Okay, this is working